G'day, I'm Scott Poynton and welcome to another podcast. And today I'm talking to Manoj Krishna. And Manoj is the founder and I guess the leader of the Human Wisdom Program based in the UK. Good morning, Manoj.
Good morning.
How are you going?
Very good. Nice to see you again, Scott.
Yeah, we had a good talk a while ago when we first connected, and connected is the right word. I think we had a great connection. I was fascinated by
We had a really good connection, yes.
Yeah, I was fascinated by the work you're doing, and it was like, we need to do a podcast. It's taken us a while, but here we are, and I'm absolutely fascinated by the work you're doing. But I'm also fascinated by your story. Tell us about Manoj Krishna. Tell us your story, Manoj, about where you grew up and the influences in your life and the work you did to get to this place.
I've always been a man without a plan. Some people have plans and other people just, so if I see a door that's interesting and it's opening, I'll just walk through. So I grew up in India, in Pune, just about 200 miles from Bombay. And I went into medicine, qualified as an orthopedic surgeon. And one day, a British orthopedic surgeon came visiting to Pune. His name was John Taylor. And I said, John, what's England like? And he gave me his card. He said, write to me. This was August. And then he wrote back and said, do you want to start in December? I had no plans to go to England.
Wow. How old were you, Manoj?
I was 26. And he said, yeah, sure. I said, yeah, I've got nothing else. I had no other plans, So I said, okay, here we go.
Were you single at that stage? Were you free to move, relatively free to move?
Yeah, I was free to move. And I moved to England, trained as an orthopedic surgeon. And then after my training, didn't know what to do. So I answered an ad from a guy called Jeff Askin in Brisbane. He was a spine surgeon, and he was looking for a trainee, a fellow, they call them. So I applied to him, and he said, yeah, sure, you can have the job. So I ended up in Brisbane for a year.
Not a bad part of the world.
Yeah, beautiful place. And he was a really generous host. I stayed with him for a year and got to love Australia and the Aussies. And then from there, I moved to Hong Kong, then back to England, and then I got a job as a spine surgeon. And I worked for 25 years as a spine surgeon. Very demanding, tough career. And then everything changed, and I left medicine
Tell me about that. You told me about that when we last spoke, and it was some moment of epiphany, I think, came for you. Tell me about that.
When some things in life are happening in parallel and you never really pay attention to them, you think it's just a side thing, it's a side interest. But since I was 18, I was interested in myself, in the way the mind works. And why do I think and feel things? And there was always this curiosity. And that interest had been sort of running in parallel with my medical career all the way. So one day I finished surgery. It was 10 hours of surgery, driving home from work. And the radio was on. And a hospital had been bombed in the Middle East somewhere. There's a war zone. It was bombed by accident. And there were these children screaming on the radio. And something just touched me deeply. And I felt I knew something. I had an understanding that could make a difference. And sometimes you just can't keep quiet anymore.
You can't ignore that voice.
You can't ignore that voice. And you felt you had to step up. And you thought, what I know is just so simple and such common sense that surely it must be part of the language that people use, but it wasn't. So gradually transitioned out of medicine, left my career. Everyone thought I was nuts because, quite a good career and a successful career as a surgeon. And I left it all together. I wrote a book on understanding ourselves and the way our minds work. It's called Understanding Me, Understanding You, an inquiry into being human. And then I set up Human Wisdom. And I started working in schools and colleges and universities, thinking that if we can educate young people to understand themselves, in addition to learning about maths and science, we could change the world. And the core idea is really simple. You see, education is about learning, but we are learning only about the world around us and not about ourselves.
Correct.
So as a result of that, all the problems that we see in the world that can't be solved all come from our thinking.
Mm-hmm.
whether it's stress and anxiety or relationship breakdown or addiction or violence or racism or climate change, all the problems humanity faces that we don't have a solution for come from our thinking. So it's really simple that if a car breaks down, you open and study the engine to see what's wrong.
Right.
Once you diagnose the problem, then it's simple. You fix it and you're good to go. So it's a similar idea. The more deeply we understand the way our mind works, the more easy it is to prevent and solve these problems that come from our thinking, which at the moment we don't seem to have an answer for.
We don't. And so in a way, it's really to look deeply and in some ways it's a bit of a hacking process, would you say? Like you really want to, like, I'm behaving in this way because my mind is telling me these things. But if I look a bit more deeply, I might be able to see things more broadly or from a different angle at least. Or I might be able to see what the other is saying and what the other is feeling. And today I'm just ignoring that or I'm just blocking it out. It's really a deeper look into the functioning of the mind, isn't it?
And we're just not taught to do that. So as adults, we have all these problems, stress and anxiety. We don't know how to solve them. We try to treat the symptoms, like taking a fire extinguisher, but we never understand the root cause of it. And so the fires keep going, you see, in our lives, one problem or the other.
What I'm interested in, Manoj, is this. It's really interesting work because I think that, and I imagine that your sort of analytical mind, that when you're a doctor, you look at things, I guess, in quite an analytical way. It's like, as you say, you lift the bonnet, you have a look at what the problem is, and you get in there and fix it. And I imagine this is a lot of the work you did as a spine surgeon, and now you're looking. Okay, so the mind is just another car, and we can lift the bonnet on that and have a look and use your analytical skills, but of course, when we're starting to deal with matters of the mind, and we're really getting into more emotions, it's not a nut that can be tightened or a bolt that can be replaced. There's something deeper there, isn't there? And beyond emotions, there's this sense of spirituality, of deep beliefs that people harbour in there, and so you're really diving into a great morass of things, aren't you? And I'm interested in also just from your own personal point of view, and it's a stupid thing, but you're Indian, you're of Indian descent, and I've spent a lot of time in India, and I find, the Indian religion and Indian mindset, there's a lot of spirituality in India. Do you think that's influenced your coming to the Human Wisdom Project?
Yeah, it may have been. I was influenced by. Of course, you're influenced by so many thinkers. You grow up imbibing all of that. But luckily, my parents never really pushed any one thing down my throat. So I was open to exploring. And, as a student, you're just curious. You look at religion, you think, no, that doesn't do it. Formal religion doesn't do it for me. Philosophy really wasn't. But this approach of because it's very scientific. So that's the beauty of it. You're just exploring the way things actually are.
Yeah. And
there's a philosopher called J. Krishnamurti who was very influential. He's written lots of books. He's died now. So he was a great source of inspiration. But many other people, if you look across the millennia, there have been many mystics who have gone deeply into the way the mind works.
Right.
So nothing I do is really original. If you look at the Zen masters, for thousands of years, they've got this tradition, or the same tradition in the Islamic world with the Sufis.
Yes, that's right.
Or in Christianity, you had Meister Eckhart and St. John of the Cross.
Correct.
And so on. So there are human beings from all cultures across the millennia who have asked these very simple questions about what it is to be human and gone deeply into understanding that. And that understanding is beautiful.
I'm with you.
And it can completely transform our lives. And I just wanted to share that with as many people as I could. And that's as simple as that.
That's the Human Wisdom Program.
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell me about it, Manoj. What did you, when you got going, how did you, how are you framing it, and where are you with the program now? I know you spent a lot of time in schools and things like this. The focus is on young people, but not exclusively.
No, it isn't. So I made an amazing discovery, which is that children from all ages, from 5 onwards, have already this innate wisdom built in. It's lying just under the surface. And what we need to do is to go in and knock on the door and just draw it out.
Mm-hmm.
The root word of education, educare, is to draw out.
I know.
It's not to put in.
Yes, exactly. I have a very good friend, Julian, who I've done some podcasts with in the past, and he reminds me of this all the time. It's to draw out. Yeah.
So let me share with you and your listeners some of the amazing insights these children have. So I'm exploring the nature of fear with 10-year-olds. And I then asked them, I said, what is the root of fear? It's a question that, a psychology class would struggle with. And this 10-year-old girl with freckles, and I've got her on video so you can watch that. She said, fear is our imagination playing up. Or there was another school where we had lots of children with mixed ethnic backgrounds. So some Muslims, some Christians, and so on. And I said, so we're exploring how to meet someone who's different with intelligence. See, that's one of the big problems the world faces, because every time we meet somebody different, there's conflict or potential for conflict. In fact, many of the conflicts in the world are between people who think they're different.
Yes.
So this girl said, I would try to find something in common with them. And I said, what is that? And she said, we're the same human being. And this is a 10-year-old, So children have this amazing wisdom.
They do.
And I was talking to another class about comparison and how, if you're my best friend and you're telling me about your favorite holiday, my first feeling is envy. It's not, I'm delighted for you. It's just the way the mind works. Even if you don't want to be envious.
It's there. It's present, yes.
So I asked this class, I said, how would our lives change if our minds didn't automatically compare itself with others all the time? And she said, we would be free. This is a 13-year-old girl.
Wow, there's some wisdom right there.
Yeah. So what I've discovered is that education around the world is missing a trick. That we think it's all about putting stuff in their heads. Instead, we should be teaching them wisdom, because that allows them, in addition to having a career, also being a successful human being. Someone who's happy, mentally healthy, lives with compassion, a sense of peace, which everybody wants, but nobody knows how to get it, you see.
Yeah.
So that's how I did. I started off with these children and then went to university and college. Can you imagine 80% of the university students I spoke to said they were moderately or severely stressed? A third had had a mental health problem in that year. And 1 in 5 of us as human beings will consider suicide at some point in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the health problems that stress can cause, everything from the common cold, and it's linked now to cancer.
Right.
It's a real emergency that we really need to address.
That's right.
But we don't know how to. So this wisdom, allows you to do that. So this project was doing so well with the teachers and students that I thought how to scale it. So that's when I started Human Wisdom. And we're creating an app which is going to have 4 programs. One for children, teenagers, parents, and adults. So they can learn about wisdom, discover it for themselves, and change their life,
And discover their own wisdom, isn't it? I mean, you mentioned...
Exactly. Discover their own wisdom. This is not the world according to Manoj. That's the key thing to understand. It's like looking at the same moon together. I don't own the moon. I didn't discover it. I didn't invent it, right? But when you and I look at it together, I may point something out. That's my role. But then you look and say, that's right, Manoj. But if you don't see it, then Manoj isn't right. You see, it's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But then you might see something and say, hey, by the way, Manoj, did you notice this? And I'll say, hey, Scott, thank you. I didn't notice that before.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's very democratic and it's really scientific.
Right. It's a sharing, isn't it? And it's an acknowledgement of difference, an acknowledgement that difference is okay. In fact, not only okay, we need that diversity of responses to looking at the moon. You know, you might look at the moon and have one flame of emotions come to you, and someone else might have something different. And let's celebrate that, as opposed to saying, well, no, come on, you're supposed to be feeling this. Why aren't you feeling this? And trying to, you know, I talk a lot about we form ourselves into tribes and of like-minded people, and we start defending our tribes and defending our positions. And as you say, this can, at a very high-level scale, this can lead to all sorts of conflicts around the world. But if we're more able to just chill out a bit and say, well, this is the way I see it. How do you see it? And you share these things. We say, God, that's fascinating. I didn't see it like that at all.
You learn.
You learn, right? And I think, and I've got another wonderful friend, Phil Judd, and I have been exploring this over the last few years on, I would say, hours of Skype chats about the importance of being open, the importance of openness in the world, because, and the beauty, for example, of saying, I don't know, because we're all encouraged to rush to a conclusion, right? Yes. And to try and stand on our soapbox and prove that my conclusion is better than yours. It seems to have a lot of problems with that. And imagine if we were able to just say, I don't know, what do you think? I'm open to your wisdom. What might we learn? And so you know, when we first were in touch, as I say, you know, the work you're doing just completely resonated with me. And you know, what you're trying to do is really get a program up that you can start inviting people and inspiring people to explore their own wisdom.
Yes.
Listening to some of the ancients and the wonderful wisdom that's out there, but not, as you say, not having it forced upon them, so that they can be open to it and make their own interpretations, as we do when we look at the moon.
You know, there are two key ideas to share with your listeners. The first is, nobody can tell us what water tastes like.
Right.
You could read a whole book about it. You can repeat the book. You can be a professor for that book, but you still never know what it tastes like. Or you can just take the water and drink it. And you know. So the same with wisdom. It has to be discovered, you see, for ourselves. You don't get it from reading a book. It might point you in the right direction, but you've got to do the walking. That's one of the key things to understand. But when we're talking about difference, you know, when we human beings look at each other, you and I, for example, we're physically different. We've had such diversely different backgrounds. And that's all we see. So the content of our memory is different and we look different. So we think we're completely unique. But our software program, or the way our mind works, is the same. It's like we've got the same Windows running in all human beings.
Right. Intel inside.
But it's working in the background. We don't see it.
Right.
And that program itself is dysfunctional.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't get rebooted or reset or revised every year. You know, you don't get an upgrade.
Version 2 is ready for download.
You don't. So at that level, we're the same human being. See, the nature of fear is the same in you and me. It's irrational, you know, and we magnify the threats. So at that level, once you start connecting with people, you realize, oh my goodness, you and I are the same. Mm. And then that awakens compassion. That's the beauty of this approach.
Yeah. That's your leaping off point, isn't it?
Yes.
It's from that base.
So the deeper you go into yourself, the more deeply you understand that you are the same as others. May I share a nice story with you and your listeners? So I was at a talk. I was talking to a group of teachers, and she won't mind me saying this, but a teacher came up to me and she was crying, and I said, "What's happening?" She says, "That was really beautiful." And I said, "Why?" She said, "I finally found a way to forgive my parents." So I said, "What happened?" She said, "I was a young woman, and they were post-war generation. And I had a boyfriend who was a different skin color to me and them. And they were unbelievably prejudiced in their attitudes to this. And there was, you can imagine the years of heartache.
Mm-hmm.
But she says, I finally understood that their behavior was caused by their unconscious conditioning post-war and their generation.
Right. Not because they were bad people.
No, because they didn't realize, you see. But she says, I am the same. The same process works in me. I'm also conditioned by my influences. I'm also not aware of them, and they influence my behavior. So at a deeper level, we're actually the same human being. I still don't agree with what they did, but I understand.
I have compassion.
And that awakens compassion, and you can have forgiveness, you see.
Yeah.
So it's at that level that this understanding really can be transformational.
Absolutely. So tell me, Manoj, tell me about the program. So when you get your apps up and running, they're not up and running yet, right?
No, it's still in development.
Still in development. So when that app's up and running and I come to your app and I click on it, what am I going to find?
So we're going to find, basically, it depends on whether you're registering for a child or a teenager, or suppose let's talk about the adult program. So when you come in, we're going to give you a different set of menus, really, for what your interests are. You might come in quite agitated. You're angry, or you're upset about something, or you're really sad. So we'll offer you some help straight away if you need something, some kind of audio narration. Or you might want to personalize this program for yourself. So you might be interested in relationships. Somebody else is anxious. Someone else is interested in stress, or someone wants to improve their communication skills. So whatever your interests, we'll have something for you there. But the full program is based on what we call the 5 circles of wisdom. It's really just dividing it up so it's a step-by-step approach. We begin with a quiet mind. You know how important it is. If you don't have a quiet mind, you can't notice anything. Your mind is too busy. So there are lots of breathing exercises and so on that we can help people have a quiet mind. The second circle is really important, which is the art of inquiry. We know how to look at the world outside. Like a telescope, you look at the heavens, but we don't know how to look within. All we have is our intelligence. So inquiry, or the art of looking at yourself, is going to be a big program in itself. Because if you don't know how to look at yourself, you can't begin this journey. And then we'll explore in the third circle the many unconscious patterns of thinking that work in the background, like our fear, or our conditioning, or our images, and so on. If you think about it, we human beings are so irrational. We spend $1.6 trillion on arms every year, and 1 billion people go hungry every day. And someone coming in from another planet would say, you guys are nuts. Why are you so afraid of each other?
What's wrong with you?
It's like saying to a class that, okay, we're all going to stop eating now. We're going to go buy guns because we're going to be so frightened of each other.
Mm-hmm.
It's not logical, but that's what fear does, you see.
Yeah.
Then we explore our emotions. And lastly, we apply all this to our life. So we'll have things like dealing with stress in a different way, dealing with racism, dealing with anxiety, relationship issues, and so on, or low self-esteem, or social media, or dealing with money, with wisdom. And this understanding gives you an insight. Gives you different options to deal with things in a fresh way. And because you've understood yourself deeply and your own operating system, if you like, and the way your mind works, it's so much easier to understand the other person because their mind is functioning in the same way. Their content of memory is different, but underneath, the mind works in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
So our relationships improve too, you see.
Yep.
There's harmony,
God knows the world needs more of that.
It does. It definitely does, you see.
We need it as individuals as much as communities and countries and the world over, don't we?
I did a presentation recently for an investor on how this wisdom can help us find peace. Because even the most successful person in the world, no matter how much money he has no peace.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that the lack of peace begins inside our mind. So if we want peace in the world, it has to begin with peace in ourselves.
Yeah,
And if there's no peace in ourselves, of course, there can't be peace in the world.
that's right. It resonates a lot with the work that I've done over many years trying to bring change to mediating conflicts. I've found myself in the middle of, and when I say conflicts, I'm not talking about war or anything like that, but where, for example, NGOs have beaten up on companies for their behaviour. And what often happens is I get asked to come in, and I find I talk on the company side and on the NGO side, always separate at first because they're busy shooting at each other. And on the NGO side, you find a lot of heightened emotions in the sense that, those guys, they're bad guys, they're doing terrible things, and really assigning bad intent, all the bad side of humanity. Those people have all those bad things. And then I go and talk to those apparently bad people, and I generally, always find them to be good people. And also with heightened emotions and usually quite stressed out of their brain because these people from these NGO are telling them and telling the world via marketing campaigns, social media campaigns, that they're really bad and evil and you shouldn't buy their products. So this has an immediate impact on their business, but at the same time, it casts them as people in a really bad light. It shames them. And they feel great pain with the shaming. And so when you first go in there, you can't actually talk about the issue at hand. You've got to grapple with the shaming and the personal response to the shaming. And some people are better at putting that aside than others. And I've had situations where it's like, that's how the NGOs work. We know we're not bad people. Let's get on and talk about the solution. And we can work very quickly. One company, I think it took us 2 weeks to get to a resolution. Another company took us 2 years. And similar scale problems trying to stop deforestation and things like this. But it just took this second company so much longer to put aside the attacks that they were taking on a very personal level. And I always wondered to myself, what might we achieve if instead we come in with compassion?
Yes.
Now, the NGOs would argue, and I understand their position, in fact, on, they say, we did that. We sent them letters. We tried to talk to them and they just ignored us. And I know there's truth in that. I know the NGOs sometimes do that. And in other conflicts, people do that. They reach out first and they get a hand in their face. And so they immediately go to the barricades and start, shooting at each other. But I just wonder if you went with compassion and said, look, I know you're not a bad person, but your business practices are causing these consequences. Not you, you're not waking up every morning and saying, how many people can I put in slave labour today? You're not waking up and saying, how many orangutans can I kill today? But these are the consequences of the way your industry works. Can we talk about those? And it's a fascinating thing because I find this dilemma between the NGOs, very good people, saying, well, we tried that, we got nowhere. And then the company saying, they never spoke to us beforehand, or they did, but, no, it wasn't in the right way. And so, when I first talked to you, I had this great sense of resonance that, my job when I first go in is more or less to, of course you never do it in a physical sense, but you almost put your arm around people and saying, it's okay. You're not a bad person. Let's see what we can do to change this conversation so that we can actually focus on the issues at hand. And I think that comes with this calm mind that you describe.
Yeah. What happens is, all our thoughts and actions come from our conditioning influences, don't they? Depending on how your particular conditioning has influenced you, that will shape your thinking. And we never question our conditioning. So we think whatever we're thinking is right.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm the CEO of a company that's raising forests and, getting rid of orangutans and making money, I've been brought up to think that's the right way to be.
Mm-hmm.
So unless you start exploring it at that level and say, hey, why do you think that?
Mm-hmm.
What's going on? I mean, take a parallel situation. Take the racism debate going on around the world. If you go to a group of white people and you start shouting at them and shaming them, and it has absolutely zero impact. In fact, it has the opposite. Their prejudices just get buried even deeper.
Yes.
But instead, if you open this conversation, say, look, these are my prejudices. They come from my unconscious conditioning influences. What are yours? What can we do to explore this together in a way that's not threatening?
Mm-hmm.
Just so that we can be a better human being.
Non-judgmental.
And that's also non-judgmental. And that's why I think we can change the world through education, educating children, but also educating adults.
Right.
See, education is not threatening. It's saying you're just learning about yourself and how your mind works. It's okay. As you say, put your arm around someone. It's okay to have a prejudice. It's normal, it's human. It's okay to have a fear. It's okay to feel envious. That's just the way the mind is. Let's explore that. And in that exploration, we can find freedom. That's the secret.
I think it's very true. It's fascinating. I was talking to a friend earlier today, just this morning, and I'm interested in your thoughts on this, Manoj, because it sounds to me that the wisdom that you speak of is the tool that I need. And in the sense that what I was trying to say is that, on the radio, when you hear on the radio and suddenly someone says an expletive, it goes meep, and you wonder how they do that. Well, it's because there's a 7-second delay between the speaking and the broadcasting. Apparently, this is what I understand. And so if the interviewer is interviewing someone and someone says something that they shouldn't have done, the interviewer can hit the button at the appropriate time, and that word gets edited out. And so I've often wondered about that with my own behaviour. Imagine if I was 7 seconds ahead of myself, and as I'm talking to someone, for example, they say something that annoys me or angers me or shames me. And as I feel that preconditioned response coming,
yes,
I'm able to see it coming. I'm able to feel it coming.
Yes.
And almost head it off and send it off in another direction out into the wilderness and say, no, I don't want you to come. I want to talk to this person and understand why they said that, and unpick that so that I learn. And so I'm sort of got this, and of course I try to practice that and fail miserably so many times. The emotions come and you say, oh, why did I do that? Why did I behave like that? But it just seems to me that the sort of things that you're talking about and the work of the Human Wisdom Program, it was almost to give me that opportunity to live my life in that way, that I can feel these things coming. And I call it turning to wonder.
Mm.
I wonder why I feel that way. And then almost letting it go, not trying to analyze it too much because, hey, I'll never know, but at least understanding that I'm feeling that way, wondering about it, and then sharing that discussion with the other person because, hey, they must be feeling a certain way too. And I think it invites compassion.
Yes.
So I'm just, interested in your thoughts on this idea of...
Well, that's really beautifully put, Scott. It's about learning.
Right.
So I'll give you a really simple example. I'll give you maybe two. Let's go back to the holiday story. You're telling me about your favorite holiday. I'm feeling jealous, and that jealousy can make me angry too. And I think you're deliberately telling me that story to make me feel bad, and how inconsiderate and thoughtless of you.
Yes.
And well, he's not my friend anymore. I'm going to walk away. That's a standard response, especially in the age of social media now. But if I pause a second and ask myself just the question you did, why do I feel that way? What's going on in my thinking to make me feel that way? Then I uncover an amazing secret, which is my mind is comparing itself with others all the time, unconsciously, right? Then I wake up and I start watching that, I see it everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can see it clearly. It's like walking into a room and putting the light on. Once you see clearly, you don't bump into things.
Right.
Or it's like driving with the headlights on so you can avoid the potholes. So it's not like comparison is wrong, but you use it in the right way, right? Not that fear is wrong, but it's used in the right way.
Yeah.
That's the main thing. Not that conditioning is wrong, but understanding it and being aware of it allows you to respond with intelligence. You say, well, I'm responding that way because I read this book or I read this newspaper, or I was brought up in a really conservative household where they didn't like gay people. And maybe that's why I don't like gay people. But that, I can see the connection. You see what I mean?
You see it.
And I realize that's not intelligent. So understanding ourselves allows us to respond with intelligence and with wisdom. That's the secret.
I'm excited, Manoj. I love the sound of what you're doing. When might we have our apps out that we can start exploring?
About a year. I think we're looking at the summer of next year.
Summer of next year. I mean, it takes a lot of
They're
development.
already in development. We've got a website. It's called humanwisdom.me. You can have a brief look at things. We've started putting some stuff on. And we'd love to hear from people who are interested in joining us. You see, our core mission is to help reduce suffering in the world. So to transform individual lives and to make the world a better place. So much of our suffering is avoidable in our relationships, in our images of ourselves, in the way we compare ourselves with others all the time. I mean, the human mind is not intelligent. Understanding how it works allows us to live with wisdom and intelligence. See? I mean, take the nature of pleasure. You might be really excited by a new car, sports car you wanted all your life. Within 3 months, you're not going to look at it anymore. You pay £1 million for a painting, stick it on a wall, look at it every day. In 3 months, you're not going to look at it anymore. That's just the nature of pleasure, you see. Understanding that allows you to then respond with wisdom. I met a school teacher who had 176 pairs of shoes.
Imelda
She was
Marcos.
deadly serious about it. But for her, because the pattern was not understood,
Right.
she was going to go and buy her 177th pair of shoes. Now, if you think about global warming and what's causing it, it's overconsumption, right?
Correct.
In the Western world, anyway. It's overconsumption. And why do we consume so much? Because we haven't understood our need for pleasure, the human need for pleasure. It's a thirst that can never be quenched.
It's hardwired, isn't it?
Yes.
It's hardwired into us. But you can hack these things.
You can change it.
Yes.
Wisdom can bring change.
Indeed.
If you have a sense of peace, if you live with a sense of peace, which is what wisdom can bring you, then your need for things, to buy things, and all of those things diminishes. Not saying it goes away.
No.
And it's not a police state. Nobody's saying, Scott, you can't buy your next pair of headphones or next car. No, we're saying, Scott, here, discover your own wisdom, and that's going to transform your own life.
I absolutely agree with you. It resonates with me completely. Humanwisdom.me is the website.
Yes.
Humanwisdom.me. Let's have a look at that. I'll put it up on the text when we get the blog up, Manoj, and then the podcast up. I want to thank you for talking to us today. And I just find that what you speak is so much wisdom, and it resonates. It really does. And I hope that everyone listening to the podcast feels that same way and visits the website and I look forward to those apps coming out, because I can just imagine them being great. Yeah, just great things that we can all reflect on. And I think that's what you're inviting, isn't it? You're not telling us how we should be. You're asking us to reflect and to think in a different way. And I love that approach. And I think I've seen so many other programs where you're told that your behaviour is wrong and you should be like this. And you know what? And then they get a lot of people coming to those things and they get a lot of success, but I don't think the success is very long-lasting or durable.
This is the main thing. So this provides long-lasting, changes to your life. And the last thing to say is every human being has this in their grasp. It's already under the surface in your own mind. You just need to let it out and discover it. So, it's not an intellectual exercise. You don't need a degree to get this wisdom. It's like learning to swim. In the end, everybody learns to swim. So, everyone, whether you're educated or not, rich or poor, can discover the beauty of this wisdom, which can change our life and the world we live in, for ourselves and our children.
Fundamentally believe it. And, one of the things, we haven't got time to talk about it now, but one of the things we've left unsaid here in our discussion is those amazing kids. I remember I did a blog a couple of years ago, I think, or I shared something a couple of years ago where some research highlighted they'd done some research on children from an age of, I think it was even 3, it could have been 5. They interviewed them again at 10, they interviewed them again at 15 and all the way up to 20. And they were able to track how their sort of their abilities in various, not just intelligence, but functional things and ways of being and ways of living had just declined as they'd gone through the education system. Yes. And I think, one of the things that's sitting below the surface here, and maybe we can explore this in a future podcast, Manoj, is this question of how our education system does this, and then say, why does it do that? What can we do to change that? What can we in a world where at the end of the day, sadly, our kids need to come out with A levels or baccalaureate scores or whatever for them to get into university. So even though if we might want to take them out of that system, they sort of need to go through it. Hopefully in time it might change. But in the meantime, what support and help and can we give them outside of the education system that this wisdom that you're speaking of and invite can be inspired and can come into the light? Yes. That, I think, is what you're talking about, right?
Maybe I could just take 1 minute before we finish, Scott, to talk about that, because it's my passion. If you ask me what's my real number one passion, if I had $1 billion, this is what I would do. I would bring this understanding to the world of education. So every child from the age of 5 onwards learned not only about maths and science, but also about themselves and how their minds work. In a generation, we could change the world if we could do that. And let's talk about and explore education in a bigger, in a separate podcast, because it's one of my real passions. And I can see it's yours too.
It is. And there's some good people here I'm talking to in the region about what we can do. So we might be able to do some great things together on that, Manoj. So
that would be so lovely.
Yeah, look, wonderful to talk to you. Thank you so much. And humanwisdom.me is the website. Let's say that again for people. Do have a visit. Contact Manoj. He's always ready for ideas and suggestions and thoughts. And look forward to seeing how it all develops, Manoj.
Well, thank you so much, Scott. It's been a real pleasure.
Thanks, mate. Good on you.
Cheers. Thank you.